The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Good evening and welcome to my State of Mind. I am Dan York. COVID hit and businesses crumbled. The federal government was trying to figure out how they could prevent it, keep people employed, and they threw a lot of money into this economy. That's not new news, but it's part of the conversation right now in Rhode Island, because amongst the things the federal government did was to send big money to businesses to keep people employed, whether the doors were open or not, and it was known as PPP, Payroll Protection Plan money. Well, it was a loan that turned into a grant if you abided by the rules and was not taxable on a federal level. Late in 2020, the feds kind of winked and said, you know what, states can tax it if they need to, and that caused Rhode Island to jump on it and assess a $70 million put into the budget for taxation on PPP. Governor Raimondo left and Governor McKee came in and he said, wait a second, small business doesn't need this. He put a threshold of $150,000 of protection, meaning if you got $150,000 or less, you didn't have a taxable event. More, you might if it actually adds to your profitability. If it doesn't, you still don't pay tax. However, the business community, more so the manufacturing community in this state, is fit to be tied, had a press conference earlier this week, and is really they're on the attack when it comes to the governor and the General Assembly's perspective on this. Karl Wadensten is the president of VIBCO, a major company here, and a Commerce Board member, and he's here to talk about this tonight. And LeBlanc, a top-rated CPA with KLR in Rhode Island, to have the debate and the argument. First, here's a headline from the coverage, and we'll get started with the conversation. And so we bring on two gentlemen who are passionate about this PPP situation and, the overall economic health recovery for our business community. The question is, which business community? Because this is, in my judgment, not a monolithic business community, at least in context of this PPP situation. Karl Wadensten is a personal friend of the show. He is the president of VIBCO, which is a vibrator manufacturing company. They make a lot of things that help machines and major apparatus in this country move. And LeBlanc is from the KLR CPA firm here in town and has been advising this business leader group on this matter of PPP. So, gentlemen, thank you. Karl, remind everybody real quick, what kind of vibrators, just so we clear that up for everybody.
They're not the sexy brand. These are for food, pharmaceutical, road construction. So you won't see us on the side of Route 95.
No, but Vibration Nation is part of your brand. Yeah. And one thing I think it needs to be said here before we get into it, and we're going to have a little bit of a debate, no doubt. Karl is a philanthropist, not only with whatever assets he can bring to the table, it's time. The amount of time that you have donated, literally, in the form of presentation and invitation to your lean technology process at VIBCO has been invaluable to businesses across the state and to the state government as well. So
correct.
You deserve much credit for that.
We've had over 9,000 visitors in 7 years for 4-hour tours. Wow. 9,000. So you figure the downtime of that. But we want to help people. I really want to help Rhode Island. You know that. I'm passionate about Rhode Island. Whatever I can do, tirelessly.
Understood. And Norm, why don't you say hi to everybody first and just talk to us about why you're engaged in this public debate.
Okay. Good morning. So I've been engaged primarily because there's an outcry, and the business community is stirred up because they spent the PPP funds, right? That loan was given, turned into a grant from the federal government, and it was made, and the instructions were, we're going to base it on 2.5 months of your payroll, and you will spend it on wages. Okay, and if you do, then the loan will become a grant. So businesses did that. They spent it on wages. And sometimes those wages weren't productive. In other words, they paid people to stay home because the marching orders out of Washington was keep people off unemployment. So they did pay people to stay home if they were on shutdown orders. And they did pay people to sanitize or do cleaning or to rearrange the equipment to put space in between them, or rearrange the office furniture, the lobby, all that time that was being paid for was not productive. And that's generally not their job duty, but that was what was being mandated out of Washington. That's what was done. And now Rhode Island, along with, at this point, only 3 other states, says, hey, we want to carve out a piece of that. And businesses spend 100% of that money on wages. What now, if the state comes and grabs the 5 or 6% tax, businesses didn't put away or put aside 5 or 6% to pay that tax. So that money comes from somewhere else. And that's the angst, because this is after the fact changes that we're not planned for or given.
Okay. So Norm just cut right to it. Rather than giving me a lot of background on his interest in this thing, he went right to the argument, which is just fine. Look, the PPP money was a stimulus saver. It was so large that no doubt it was sloppy. I think we're gonna find that there's probably some fraud in it, and all the way down the line. Who knows? And I'm not talking about just Rhode Island. I'm talking about everywhere here. But I think one of the key things that we should be talking about here is, how many folks are actually dealing with a tax. And Governor McKee, we need to go backwards on the background on this thing. When the Trump administration, articulated that states perhaps could go this way, states that have piggyback laws on the federal tax program, like Rhode Island, had to literally propose a change in state law in order to be able to take advantage of that. Connecticut and Massachusetts were ready to do that, but the kind of pushback that you guys are offering in those states caused both governors to say, you know what, I'm not dying on this hill. We're not going to tax the PPP when the federal government didn't. And it's as simple as that. It's almost more reputational, I think, than it is a clinical financial analysis. But Governor Raimondo's administration, remember, we had a governor prior to Governor McKee, right? Started this ball rolling in connection with everybody else who count the beans in Rhode Island, with a revenue conference that took what the feds were saying, established what the number would be at the appropriate tax rate to tax PPP in the state, and came up with a $70 million put into our budget now. Dan McKee said, you know what? I don't think small businesses can suffer this, along the lines of what you're saying, Norm. And he put a $150,000 threshold whereby up to $150,000, you don't have to worry about this issue. There's no applicable tax. $1 over $150,000 will be applied, turned into a revenue stream that is taxable against your other P&L. And so if you still lost money, it's not a taxable event. That is at least the concept here. What's wrong with that?
Well, Dan, let me roll back a little bit, because Dan McKee, jumped into office as our former governor left the state, right? So Dan McKee has legacy things, and I applaud him for looking at a threshold. I applaud him for doing that. He's a business guy, right? So our argument here is really to help the governor see that industry counts on him, because he's an industry and an employer support guy, which is great. And I really press the House and the Senate to help support our governor in ways to do this with budget surplus that we have that wasn't seen at the beginning of this whole push to why are we being singled out? And the 10% that's getting taxed employs 76.2% of the people in the state of Rhode Island. So I'm really, really trying to help the governor to help others in the in the judgment or the passing of a bill to do this, help support him, support Rhode Islanders. And I believe authentically that he wants to support Rhode Islanders, and he's seeing a big upcry from business now.
Okay, so
support him do that.
All right, so when we come back, we're going to talk about what the governor's rationale is here, and we'll talk about the big picture too. Stay with us in our State of Mind on this PPP tax discussion.
90% of the businesses that borrowed on a PPP received the benefits of $150,000 rate in terms of that's not going to be counted as income up to $150,000, right? The businesses that are concerned have made, and they're in the pandemic, have made hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not multi-millions of dollars during the pandemic. Those are the ones who are speaking out strongly. I have met with them. I don't agree with them, but I do agree that they have the right to build their argument.
Welcome back to my State of Mind. Karl Wadensten is the president of VIBCO in Wyoming, and there is a Wyoming, Rhode Island. That would be exit 3 for those of you scoring at home off 95. And Norm LeBlanc is from KLR, a CPA firm here in the region. So, guys, the governor looks at this PPP tax, and folks, that's the conversation we're having. The PPP tax, the payroll protection plan that the federal government, surged money into during COVID to cover people, make sure they were still working. As long as you followed the requirements, ballpark 80%, of the money dedicated to payroll, you were forgiven the loan. It just turns into a grant, right? So for those who did the right things, they expect that they not only won't have to pay the money back, and B, they don't have a tax on it from a federal side. Rhode Island is looking to apply an earnings tax on that money over $150,000 worth of loan received. The governor is fixed on this idea. While he thinks mitigating for 90% of the businesses that got loans, meaning under $150,000, is important, he also believes that there are companies that made millions, and in fact were able to not only survive COVID. COVID was incredible. Some businesses exploded because they were offering the right products and services, for COVID, while others were decimated. It doesn't seem like there was a lot of middle ground, but there are companies out there that were in middle ground, just hung on, and they're likely not going to suffer a tax event here, Norm. So, what of the companies that the few, maybe not VIBCO, maybe not many of the businesses that got together this week to argue this case, but what of the companies that kind of had a bonanza with all of this?
So Dan, this is the one problem with tax, right, is it applies to everybody, right? Meaning everybody that got a loan over $150,000. Well, there are some that did okay. There's some that did poorly. And some, Ed, to your point, had a middle ground. The problem is you can't single out which is which. You don't know, because this is done on a dollar threshold, not an industry basis or any certain segment. And even within a segment, I'll give you a great example. Medical community. You think that'd be booming, right, during a pandemic? But I can tell you primary care and specialized surgeries, elective surgeries, or orthopedic, a lot of that stuff got shut down because it could be postponed. And those industries suffered, even though they were medical, and you would think medical would be a booming industry. So it's almost impossible for the state to say, well, we think everybody that got a bigger loan did A-okay. And that's just not the case, because again, these loans/grants were based on employment, not profits.
But to the other point, your good work as you do the tax work on a company, they might have got, somebody could have got $10 million worth of PPP, but they still got beat. So they didn't make any money that particular year. I don't think the $150,000 threshold is there to protect small business so they don't have to worry about it, period. Those larger businesses still may have lost money, and if they lost money, it doesn't create a taxable event exclusively on the loan. So I'm not following this. It seems to me that the numbers actually bear out. If you made a considerable amount of money and the PPP added to your profit, you're going to see a proportionate tax on it. You're not going to have to repay the loan. You're just going to have to tax on
but
it.
Dan, where do you put your baseline on profit versus not profit? Private industry is to make money. So we cut expenses. We did a lot of different things to show a profit. Was the profit the same as year over year? Was the profit more than year over year? And they're attributing the PPP loan money as a enhancer to profit. Is that correct, Norman? Did I get that right?
Well, yeah, and again, I'll go back to, to highlight my passion and all this. It's that businesses couldn't plan. Like typically, if you did have a profit or you had some type of windfall, you would carve out a piece for taxation. But all along, the drumbeat was this will not be taxed. And Rhode Island's current law does not tax it. So businesses didn't put aside money. They didn't plan for that. They didn't make estimated payments. Is the state going to penalize businesses because they didn't make a payment? They're going to charge the 18% interest they charge because the business didn't make a payment on time?
I'd be with you. I'd be with you completely on that. I mean, that would be that would be grossly unfair. I mean, they haven't even passed a law yet.
This is my passion. I don't get it. How do you go backwards in time? That's the unfairness, and that's what riles me up. Is there was no planning, there was no, forewarning. Businesses couldn't budget for this. They didn't make estimated payments based on this, and now here it comes. That's not good governance.
All right. When we come back, there might be another argument too that may sway you one way or the other. We'll be right back with Norman LeBlanc and with Karl Wadensten on this controversial issue on PPP tax. Stay with us. Back with my guests on this controversial case of whether Rhode Island should tax the personal payroll, the payroll protection plan, the PPP money as it's known. Boy, COVID gave us a lot. I mean, it's nice to be working our way out of this, at least on a local level, to see each other without masks and all of that. We'll reflect on that in a second. Karl Wadensten, who heads up the VIBCO company and has been a prominent mover and shaker in this business leader argument against the PPP, and Norman LeBlanc, who is a top-ranked CPA working for KLR here in town. I want to get to some of the other quick tax issues that are actually on the table, and I think you have agreement with Governor McKee on, which is important because he's being, I think, portrayed perhaps inaccurately as a guy that's just looking to tax business, at least from your group's perspective. The one question that I think the governor still has to ponder, and that is all of what he thinks is the right intent aside to add and convert PPP loans over $150,000 to taxable income, is whether or not you guys are going to scream loud enough and long enough to actually give this place a terrible reputation. Now, look, the decision is the catalyst to the reputation. I understand that. But the more you complain about it, the more the state ends up in a reputation of being, one of the few, and perhaps in the region, the exclusive state to do this, when we have long battled a reputation which is anti-business.
And Dan, I've spent a considerable amount of time on the Commerce Board, and our first discussion about this was the optics. And it's not just Norm and I, it's the business community in general. And we love Rhode Island. We said that in our speech. And we're either all together on this or we all sink on this. We do not want Rhode Island to sink because we need support from vendors, from customers, and have Rhode Island as that place. So, I don't want to lambaste this governor because I want to work with him and get this going and make Rhode Island the go-to place for business and industry.
I think that's, look, I don't know how long this PPP thing would linger and be a stench on the state. It may come and go. We tend to hyperbolize these things a little bit, but I will tell you this: he's not the only conversation in this. The General Assembly has been drafting off the governor here. I am told that the Speaker of the House is interested in carving out the waiver of $150,000 and taxing from $1. So. McKee is being positioned as this, and you're being diplomatic about it, kind of the bad guy in this whole thing. The General Assembly is yet to show its cards here. So that's a whole other ballgame.
And I said that at the very beginning of this, that the Speaker and Mr. Ruggiero, the three of them with the governor and the business, the employer community, need to get together and work on this. So the next doorstep is a knock on those two doors and say, guys, let's have some awakening here.
And here's the transition, Norm. I mean, one of the things that needs to be pointed out is that your group this week was talking not only about the PPP tax, but the income tax raise and the wealth tax. There's a progressive movement on the State House right now, and in the State House, that wants to see that package. The governor has said no on the income tax increase, no on the wealth tax increase. So, you know, he's 2 out of 3 with you guys. You know that, right?
Yes. God bless him, and thank you for the forward thinking, right, Norm?
God fully aware, and this is universal. We're all in one boat. We all need to row one direction.
Okay, I just think that point needs to be made. Norman, thank you for your time. Give me a final thought. What is your punctuating quick statement about this?
Yeah. So the federal government knew this. Yes, there would be some fraud that's been investigated. The SBA knew that this was loose and wild, right? Because it was done very quickly. And it was designed to get cash out there. That doesn't make it bad. Remember, let's go back. It was a pandemic. People were panicking. Even the companies that made money at the time, they didn't know. Was the economy going to totally shut down? Was there going to be stay-at-home orders for a long time? Nobody knew that. They needed to hedge against it. And as much as anybody can say, well, there was easy money, it was done on purpose. The federal government knew what they were doing. They knew it was right for inequalities, but that was done on purpose because of the unknowns and the panic. Let's not forget that.
Yeah. Okay. Fair point. Karl, final word.
We did our duty for the state as employers, and the state did their duty to help us. Now let's get out of this together. And the Speaker and the Senate and the governor, I thank the governor for all he does for us. Let's get together, guys.
All right. Thank you. Karl Wadensten from VIBCO and Norman LeBlanc from KLR. We will follow this mostly on the radio, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO, because the situation at the State House is no doubt fluid. Final thought when we come back. Stay with us. The General Assembly makes its move to the end of the fiscal year. This PPP and a whole bunch more will be on our radar here and on the radio show, weekdays 3 to 6 on WPRO. Have a great evening.